The power in any relationship lies with the person who cares the least. For example, I am sure everyone watching this video has been through a breakup before, whether you decided to part ways with a former employer or whether the breakup was a personal relationship. At some point, we all go through a breakup. The days and weeks following the breakup, it can paint a clear picture for people looking at the relationship from the outside as to which party cares the most. Oftentimes, the person initiating the breakup, they tend to move on rather quickly. They have been processing the breakup for weeks, maybe even months. By the time they finally make the decision, they've already processed the feelings of sadness. They've already processed all the negative emotions. Once the decision's finally been made, the only thing they are feeling is a sense of relief. And then we have the person getting dumped. Some people can handle it well, most do not. Oftentimes, they are caught by surprise. They didn't see the breakup coming. Maybe they lash out. Perhaps they get on social media to express their outrage and make themselves look like a complete baboon. The problem when you have a broken heart, there is nothing that anyone can do about it. There's only one cure for a broken heart: time. Right now, there are two men in sports media who have clearly had their heart broken. Right now, there are two men in sports media who are lashing out publicly at their former partners in the butt bongo. Oddly enough, both of these men, they had their hearts broken by the same dude. One of the men I'm talking about, Stephen A. Smith. The other is a 50-something-year-old grown man who, for some unexplained reason, decides to call himself Shay Shay. For weeks now, Shay and A, they have been acting like women scorned. I expect to see this type of behavior from the Yentas on The View. I expect to see this type of emotional behavior when my girlfriend forces me to sit through an episode of The Real Housewives of the WNBA. Now, of course, most of the housewives on that show have beards along with a protrusion in their yoga pants, but they still do display feminine traits. But it's weird seeing this level of emotional behavior from two dudes, especially when one of them is an NFL Hall of Famer. You know, there's something to be said about humility. When you're great at something, when you have managed to make it to the top of the mountain, there is no reason for you to have to explain your success to everyone else. Your resume, your accomplishments, they should speak for themselves. You know how many times I have heard Joe Rogan brag about being the #1 show in America? None. It's rare for me to see a press release from the NFL bragging about their television ratings. Now, the NBA, they draw 2 million viewers during the regular season. Adam Silver, he's firing up the grill to grill the woke wiener. The WNBA has 70 or 80 people streaming a facial hair counting contest on YouTube. Kathy Engelbert sends out a press release claiming thousands of minutes of dump action were consumed on YouTube. Real winners do not have to explain their success. It's self-explanatory, which is why I'm so confused as to why Stephen A. Smith and the grown man who calls himself Shay Shay, I'm confused as to why they continue bragging about their rating success. Not only that, I'm really confused as to why they continue to be obsessed with Skip Bayless. If anyone should feel bitter in this situation, it should be Skip Bayless. For the 7th year in a row, ratings for Undisputed, they are rivaling Bomani Jones in the category of huge embarrassing failure. Meanwhile, Shay has boosted ratings on Woke Take to the point where 2, sometimes 300,000 additional viewers are tuning in on Monday and Tuesday, while ratings the rest of the week struggle to reach 500,000, which I think eventually that is going to cause a rift between Shay and A. Right now, they are united because they have a common enemy, but I could see some maybe professional jealousy developing between Shay and A once this situation with Skip Bayless blows over. But for weeks now, Stephen A. Smith and Shannon Sharpe, they have talked more about Skip Bayless than they talked about the NFL. Every time I open my news feed, there is another article about Stephen A. Smith tarnishing the reputation of Skip Bayless. The question is, why? Seriously, why? It doesn't make any sense. The only thing I can think of, Stephen A. and Shannon Sharpe, they are bonding over their shared experiences with Skip Bayless. They are bonding over their broken hearts, their emotional pain. Shay and A have two things in common. One, Both of their media careers were saved by Skip Bayless. But what for Skip Bayless, Stephen A. Smith would still be a beat reporter doing the laundry in NBA locker rooms. And God only knows where Shannon Sharpe would be. After he was fired by CBS in 2014 or 2015 for lacking the ability to complete sentences and put together coherent thoughts, Shannon Sharpe's media career, it was over. This dude couldn't have gotten a job at the LGBT network judging the shirtless selfie competition. My inside sources tell me they actually gave him a tryout. Chris Cuomo hit the stage. Hey, it's me, Chrissy C. Chris Cuomo hit the stage, shirt on the floor, the big stiff cigar in his mouth. Producers, they put the camera on Shay to describe the scene to the viewers watching at home. He could not speak because his damn jaw was on the floor. He was mesmerized at the sight of a shirtless Chris Cuomo. There was one person in sports media willing to give Shannon Sharpe a chance. There was one person in sports media who actually believed in him. Skip Bayless. And to his credit, Skip Bayless saw something in Shannon Sharpe that no one else did, the same way he did with Stephen A. Smith. Now, the second thing that Shay and A have in common, they were actually dumped by Skip Bayless. Stephen A. was not happy when Skip left ESPN for Fox Sports. I would imagine that was a very traumatic time for him. Executives at ESPN, they had already seen what happens when Stephen A. was solely responsible for drawing an audience. Huge, embarrassing failure. Now, obviously, it ended up working out for him this time, but he didn't know that when Skip Bayless dumped him for more money. Shay was also dumped by Skip Bayless. However, Skip was classy enough to allow the perception to be created that Shannon Sharpe was leaving of his own volition. Publicly, Skip Bayless was painted as the bad guy. The narrative was Shannon Sharpe was so unhappy, he was so emotionally triggered by Skip Bayless that he just couldn't work with him any longer. When the truth was, Shannon Sharpe was fired. He was dumped by Skip Bayless. Over these past few weeks, Shay and A have talked non-stop about Skip Bayless. They've kicked him while he was down. They've shoved their rating success in his face. Now, throughout all this time, Skip Bayless has said nothing. He has remained silent. So you tell me, who is bothered here? Who is bitter? Skip Bayless or Shay and A? You know, I have never been one to, I hate this phrase, but I have never been one to pull the race card. I have never been one to look at a situation and inject mythical racism into it. And I'm not saying that's the case here, but I'm really starting to wonder if this love triangle has a racial component to it, at least from the perception of Shay and A. Two dudes who were dumped by the white man, two dudes who were kicked to the curb by the white man because he wanted to go in a different direction. And look, I'm not a defender of Skip Bayless. I don't have this deep-seated resentment towards him like Shay and A seem to have, but I am not a defender of Skip Bayless. I refuse to defend anyone who apologizes for their white privilege. I'm just struggling to understand why Stephen A. and Shannon Sharpe had this weird obsession with him. I don't get it. 2 weeks ago, Shannon Sharpe had Stephen A. on his podcast where they spent an inordinate amount of time talking about Skip Bayless. I thought that was the end of it. I thought they had finally released all their feelings of bitterness. That was not the case. A couple of days ago, Stephen A. returns the favor. He invites Shay on his podcast. For damn near the entire hour, the topic of conversation was once again centered around Skip Bayless. At this point, this is just getting embarrassing. I mean, you would think at some point they would finally let it go. They would decide to move on. I mean, you're winning here. You're dominating him in the ratings. Why would you continue giving your competition free publicity? I mean, it would be one thing if Skip Bayless was responding to all this bullshit. At least that would give Shay and A some new material to work off of. But instead, when you listen to them, we're given the same stories. We're given the same complaints. I'm going to show you a couple of clips. I'm going to let you be the judge. You tell me if these dudes are emotionally bitter. Roll the film.
I remember going home, calling my sister. I called my brother. My homeboy has everybody had told him, and he had raced home. He'd watch it. It took a lot. It took a lot for me not to put my hands on him. It actually did.
I'm so thankful you didn't do that. And how much trouble was the relationship between you two in at that particular moment?
A lot of that is my fault, because there were times that led up to that I felt that shots were taken and I let it go. And he felt that he could go over the top in that situation. Whatever the relationship is, once one partner has no respect for the other partner then in turn loses respect for said partner. Then I think it's only a matter of time, because I felt in that moment he had lost all respect for me. He had no respect for me. This is undisputed. Skip and Shannon, this is not yours. So it really, really hurt me. We barely talk. I mean, honest to God. We might say hello. We go to the bathroom. If we're passing each other in the bathroom, hello, that was it. It was not a carry on a conversation. It was very little communication.
Why was that the case?
Well, I take my cue from him. He was not a guy that was very talkative in the mornings. During the breaks, he would get up and leave. After a couple of times of seeing that, I'm seeing that he's in a mode, he's in a zone in which he doesn't want to be bothered.
You know, I thought it was interesting that Shannon Sharpe mentioned how relationships tend to end over a lack of respect. Like I said earlier, right now, Stephen A. and Shannon Sharpe, they are bonding over a common enemy. Right now, it's all rainbows and woke wieners in this bromance. There are plenty of passionate woke hugs to go around. But what is going to happen when you remove Skip Bayless from this equation? Relationships built on that kind of foundation rarely stand the test of time. Just think about it. I'm sure you've heard about the couple who left their husband or their wife so they could be together. They were cheating on their spouse, thinking that this new relationship was what they really wanted. How often does that new relationship last? How often does it work out? Hardly ever. Shannon Sharpe has already said publicly that First Take would dominate Undisputed in the ratings with or without Stephen A. Smith, which that's all good right now because Stephen A., I think, is looking to leave ESPN. But what happens if that plan changes? What happens if Stephen A. finds himself in a scenario where he needs to stay at ESPN? He's going to expect more money. He's going to expect $15, maybe $20 million a year, and he ain't going to get it. Why would ESPN pay him that kind of money when Shannon Sharpe is drawing better ratings for a tenth of the price? When Shannon Sharpe is on the show, First Take is pulling 7, sometimes 800,000 viewers. When it's just Stephen A. Smith and that rotating panel of shit fucks that no one cares about, ratings are between 4 and 500,000. We could actually have a situation here where the co-star begins to outshine the star. With the addition of Shannon Sharpe, maybe Stephen A. Smith is no longer the biggest star at ESPN. And that's where I think that this bromance could eventually fall apart. Give me your thoughts. Here we go again. Stephen A. Shea tarnishing Skip Bayless, the man who saved their media careers. To me, it's just becoming embarrassing at this point. I mean, why continue to kick a man while he's down? I don't understand the obsession. Maybe you can explain it to me. Sound off in the comments below. Like, subscribe, share the video. I appreciate you guys and your continued support. I got to get the hell out of here. It's another Tuesday, so kids got flag football tonight. Follow me on Twitter at KC_BTL84, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.